Some women don't chase, and yet, they are never forgotten. They do not storm the gates of a man's attention, nor do they demand his eyes. Instead, they slip quietly into his world, not with noise but with presence. And that presence lingers long after the moment has passed. They move through a man's life like shadows through fire, untouchable, and yet burning into his memory. This is the paradox of deep soul attraction. The woman who does not grasp becomes the woman he cannot release. She is not defined by what she gives away, but by what she withholds, not as a game, but as a natural state of wholeness. She has tasted her own depth, her own silence, her own worth, and she carries it like a hidden crown upon her head. A man senses this. Even if he cannot name it, even if his conscious mind resists it, his unconscious bends toward her. Carl Jung once wrote that what remains unconscious will appear in our lives as fate. And so it is with her. She stirs in him what he has not yet faced, his longing, his loneliness, his hunger for completion. But he mistakes her for salvation, when in truth she is only the mirror. In her presence, he is confronted with the shadow of his own desire, the vast emptiness within that demands filling. She does not rush to soothe it, she does not run into the fire of his need. That restraint, that patience, becomes the mark of her power, and it is in this restraint that her image grows eternal. For the more she refuses to chase, the more he feels her absence like a wound. Desire, after all, is not only about closeness, it is about distance. The unreachable always burns brighter than the already possessed. Her secret lies in her stillness. She embodies what every man unconsciously longs for, the woman who does not dissolve into him, but stands sovereign beside him. She does not plead to be chosen, she has already chosen herself. And this, more than beauty, more than words, more than any display of affection, is what etches her into his memory. Because the man does not truly remember the women who gave themselves too easily. He remembers the one who walked like shadow, who touched him without touch, who set his heart on fire simply by being untouchable. She becomes the silent crown upon his desire, not because she belonged to him, but because she never did. He cannot name why he wants her. The words do not exist, not in the simple language of attraction, not in the shallow vocabulary of charm or beauty. He tells himself it is her mystery, her quiet smile, the way her presence shifts the atmosphere of a room. But beneath the surface, Jung would say it is something far older, something hidden in the chambers of his unconscious. For what he desires is not the woman herself, but the shadow of his own longing reflected through her. She becomes the vessel of his anima, the inner feminine that lives within every man, the half of his soul he has never dared to meet. In her, the anima stirs. She carries the shape of his forgotten tenderness, his unlived sensitivity, his hunger for union with the lost part of himself. When he looks at her, he believes he sees the woman, but in truth, he sees his own soul dancing behind her eyes. And suddenly, he is both enthralled and afraid. Enthralled, because she awakens in him a depth he has always chased yet never named. Afraid, because she is not merely flesh and bone to him, she is a mirror, and mirrors never lie. She reflects not only the beauty of his longing, but also the emptiness it springs from. She forces him to encounter the shadow, the hollowness, the ache he has tried to bury beneath ambition, conquest, or distraction. He does not yet understand this. He clings to the illusion that desire is possession, that if only he could have her, hold her, claim her, he would finally be complete. But desire, as he begins to taste for the first time, is not possession. Desire is surrender. It is the act of being undone, of kneeling before the truth that another human being cannot fill the void, only reveal it. This is why she unsettles him. She does not chase. She does not beg to be chosen. She holds herself apart, not as rejection, but as sovereignty. And in that distance, he feels the trembling of his own soul. He cannot conquer her without conquering himself first. He cannot hold her without first meeting the woman who lives inside his own unconscious. And so, what draws him to her is not the promise of love alone, but the promise of transformation. For she is not merely the woman he desires, she is the anima he has yet to embrace. She is the key to his surrender, and he both longs for and fears the unlocking. Every man projects. Even when he believes he is seeing her clearly, he is not. The image of the goddess, the lover, the savior, the mother, all of these live inside him as fragments of his unconscious. They are archetypes, timeless figures buried deep within the psyche, and they rise up like shadows when he meets a woman who stirs his soul. He thinks she is new, that she is unlike anyone before. But in truth, she is not new at all. She is ancient, as old as the first wound of his heart, as eternal as the dreams he has never spoken. When she appears, carrying the stillness of someone who does not need, he feels the tremor of something larger than attraction. Her presence unsettles him because it carries no grasping, no hunger, no plea to be validated. And in that stillness, he feels his own incompleteness echoing back at him. She becomes the mirror of what he lacks, and that reflection feels like destiny. He calls it love, but it is more dangerous, more elusive, more fragile than that. It is projection. For projection is not false, it is unfinished. What he pours into her is not invented, but it is not hers either. It is his. The qualities he sees in her, the warmth, the mystery, the eternal feminine, are aspects of his own soul that he has not yet welcomed home. She carries them for him, unconsciously, and thus he clings to her as if she were salvation. But Jung reminds us, love is rarely pure when the shadow remains unseen. What is not owned in the self will always be demanded from the other. So he pursues her, not out of recognition, but out of hunger. His love grows fierce, even desperate, because he does not realize that what he seeks is not in her, it is within. She, meanwhile, knows. Perhaps not with words, but with instinct. She feels the weight of his gaze, the intensity that calls her both holy and human, divine and dangerous. She knows he does not truly see her, not yet. He sees his anima clothed in her skin. He sees the hope of healing, the balm for his ache, the crown for his emptiness. And yet, what he chases is not her. It is himself, hidden in her silence. She is not the answer, she is the mirror. And until he turns inward, until he dares to face the projection for what it is, he will never touch her essence, only the reflection of his own unclaimed soul. And she does not chase. The world has taught many women that to be loved, they must prove their worth, they must bend, they must offer themselves as sacrifice. But she has unlearned this. She carries in her heart the knowledge that chasing is the currency of those who have not yet seen their own value. She does not need to chase because she already embodies what she seeks. She knows the difference between the hunger of a man's ego and the depth of his soul. The ego craves possession. It clings. It demands. It fears abandonment and confuses obsession with intimacy. But the soul does not cling. The soul recognizes, it reveres, it stands in awe without needing to consume. When a man comes to her with frantic desire, when his hands grasp too tightly, when his words carry desperation rather than devotion, she sees not his love, but his wounds. For she understands this truth: the one who grasps too tightly is the one still ruled by the child within, still reaching for the comfort that was once denied. His grip is not a promise of devotion but a symptom of unhealed ache. And she, wise in silence, sovereign in her restraint, does not surrender to that wound. She does not offer herself as its cure. In her restraint, she wears the crown. For the power of desire is not found in the one who begs, but in the one who can walk away. He may call her cold, he may label her distant, but beneath his words is the trembling knowledge that he cannot command her. She remains sovereign, not because she withholds love, but because she refuses to abandon herself. Her silence is not weakness, it is sovereignty. Silence speaks in ways desperation never can. It tells him, I am whole without you. I am not the balm for your brokenness. I will not shrink myself to soothe your hunger. This silence draws him deeper, for in it he feels both the ache of his own emptiness and the mystery of her strength. He cannot tame it, he cannot explain it, and it unsettles him because it reminds him of his own unfinished work. Thus, she rules not with loud declarations, but with absence. Not with force, but with presence. In her refusal to chase, she becomes unforgettable. In her restraint, she teaches him that love is not found in clutching, but in standing whole. And in that truth, she remains untouchable, a queen in the shadow of desire. Yet beneath this dance lies something darker. For what appears to be romance is often the collision of two shadows, two histories pressing themselves into the present moment. A man who was abandoned clings harder. He holds as though release would mean death, for his body remembers what his mind cannot forget, the sting of being left behind. And the one who was unloved as a boy, starved of tenderness, mistakes intensity for intimacy. His pulse races, his voice trembles, his eyes burn with desperation, and he tells himself this is love. But it is not love. It is the ache of the child within him, demanding to be seen at last. He calls his obsession devotion, but obsession is devotion distorted. His longing is not for her as she truly is, but for the healing of wounds carved long before she ever arrived. He does not realize that he is asking her not to love him, but to rescue him. And rescue is not love, it is captivity dressed as tenderness. And she, if unaware, could confuse his need with love. She could take the desperation as proof of passion, the grasping as a sign of depth. Many women have. For the human heart longs to be chosen, and a man who clings with such ferocity can feel like proof of worth. But what feels like power is often a trap, for when love is mistaken for the healing of old wounds, it collapses under the weight of unmet childhoods. But the awakened woman has done her shadow work. She has walked through her own storms of abandonment. She has faced the mirror of her own longing. She has burned through the illusions that told her chaos was passion, that pain was proof of love. She has learned that fire without stillness consumes, and passion without foundation destroys. So she does not fall for the illusion. She does not bend beneath the weight of his projections. She recognizes that the child within him is calling, but she knows she is not the mother, not the healer, not the vessel for his repair. She is a woman who has learned to belong to herself first. And in that belonging, she sees clearly, love that grows from trauma is not love, but hunger. Her soul no longer confuses hunger with devotion, or obsession with intimacy. She has chosen something rarer, something quieter, something more enduring. She has chosen the kind of love that does not chain, but liberates. And for that, she refuses to answer the cries of his wounded child. Jung spoke of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. Not by acquiring another, not by clinging to the outside world, but by turning inward to reconcile the fragments of the self. And she, this awakened woman, embodies that path. She is not perfect, not untouchable, but she has walked through the fires of her own shadow. She has learned that true union begins within. She does not bend herself to fit into his emptiness. She does not trim her edges to soothe his wounds, nor does she dissolve into the shape of his longing. Instead, she stands as a mirror, a luminous reflection, daring him to confront the parts of himself he has long exiled. In her presence, his forgotten tenderness stirs. His buried grief rises. His unacknowledged vulnerability whispers to be let in. She does not heal these for him, but she makes them visible. And visibility, in the language of the soul, is the first doorway to transformation. Her love does not rescue, it reveals. Rescue would chain them both to a lie, him to dependency, her to sacrifice. Revelation, however, is liberation. By standing rooted in her own sovereignty, she allows him the chance to meet his anima, to embrace his shadow, to walk the path of individuation himself. But the choice is his alone. And if he cannot rise to meet her, she does not weep. She does not beg for his attention, nor does she crumble beneath the weight of his absence. She does not fall into the trap of believing that her worth depends on his recognition. For she has already recognized herself. Her value is not borrowed from his gaze, it is etched into her very being. In silence, she holds her crown, not the crown of superiority, not the brittle crown of pride, but the crown of self-possession, the knowledge that to hold herself is greater than to be held by another who cannot yet see. She knows that any love demanding she abandon herself is no love at all. This is the quiet power of individuation. She belongs to herself before she belongs to anyone else. She has united her own shadow, befriended her own wounds, and woven them into strength, and so, whether he joins her in wholeness or remains lost in projection, her path does not collapse. She continues, sovereign and steady, carrying the rare truth that the deepest love does not require rescue, only recognition. Thus, in the shadow of desire, she holds the crown. Not because he worships her, not because she is untouchable, but because she governs herself. This crown is not handed to her by men, nor is it won through seduction or conquest. It is born of sovereignty, the rare strength of a woman who has walked into her own depths, faced her own shadows, and emerged whole. Her throne is her self-worth, carved not from gold or applause, but from silence, solitude, and the unshakable truth that she belongs first to herself. Her crown is her silence, a silence that does not plead, does not chase, does not bargain. A silence that speaks louder than 1,000 confessions, whispering to him that she cannot be reduced to the role of rescuer or possession. And her power is her choice. For she is not trapped by the hunger of his desire, nor by the old stories that tell women they must yield to be loved. She chooses, and in her choosing she reigns. Men may circle her, consumed by longing, intoxicated by the mystery they cannot solve. They call her distant, they call her cold, yet they return, drawn to the stillness that eludes their grasp. What unsettles them most is not her beauty, nor her grace, but her refusal to abandon herself. She does not bend to their projections, nor collapse beneath their hunger. In her presence, they are forced to confront their own emptiness, their own shadow, their own exile from the inner feminine. And yet, here lies the true secret, she is not withholding from them. She is not playing a game, not crafting illusions, not holding back as a strategy. No, she is holding for herself. She is keeping safe the parts of her that once were given away too freely, the tenderness once wasted on those who could not see. She does not starve them of her love, she simply refuses to starve herself. This is why she remains unforgettable. Not because she is beyond reach, but because she refuses to abandon her throne. In a world where so many barter themselves for scraps of attention, her refusal becomes a kind of revolution. She teaches, without words, that the greatest crown a woman can wear is the one forged from her own wholeness. And so, she walks not as a prize, but as a sovereign presence. Desire may chase her, longing may follow her, but her crown is never touched, for it rests in the shadow, glowing with the light of self-possession. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak, she simply sees more. She sees beyond the mask of desire, beyond the promises woven in desperation, beyond the fragile illusions of possession. She sees the shadow behind the man's longing, the child behind his obsession, the ache beneath his pursuit. And in that vision, she knows the truth: love is not proven in grasping, nor in sacrifice, but in the quiet strength of presence. Her silence is not absence. It is not a void, nor a punishment. It is the sound of sovereignty. It is the language of a woman who has chosen to no longer abandon herself for the sake of someone else's hunger. In silence, she draws a line that cannot be crossed, not out of cruelty, but out of reverence for her own soul. For she understands what many forget, that to hold herself with dignity is the greatest act of love she can ever embody. And so, she does not collapse into sorrow when he fails to rise. She does not beg to be seen. She does not break herself into pieces, hoping to be gathered in his hands. Instead, she walks away, not as retreat, but as transcendence. Her leaving is not rejection, but revelation. It reveals the gap between his longing and his readiness, between his desire and his depth. And though he may curse her absence, though he may ache for her presence, though her silence may echo in him long after she is gone, he cannot erase her. For the unforgettable ones are not those who gave everything away, but those who remained whole in the face of hunger. This is why she becomes eternal in his memory. Not as the one who was possessed, but as the one who remained sovereign. Not as the woman who begged, but as the woman who saw. Her crown is not jeweled with his devotion, but with her self-possession. And her silence is not emptiness, it is the sound of truth. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She simply sees more. And in her seeing, she becomes unforgettable. True power in love is not found in chasing, clinging, or sacrificing oneself to be chosen. It is found in self-possession, in holding your worth so deeply that no one else can define it for you. A woman who learns to walk away in silence does not do so out of coldness, she does it out of clarity. She sees the difference between love born of wounds and love born of wholeness. And in her seeing, she becomes unforgettable, because she is not just a reflection of desire, she is the embodiment of sovereignty. The best point here, and perhaps the one that resonates most deeply, is the truth that her silence is not weakness, it is sovereignty. That line alone carries the essence of this entire teaching. Silence, when rooted in self-worth, speaks louder than any argument, any plea, any demand for recognition. It says, I belong to myself first. And in today's world, where so many lose themselves in the chaos of attachment, this reminder is not only powerful, it is necessary. Now, I would love to hear from you. Which part of this message spoke to you the most? Was it the revelation about projection, the truth about trauma and attraction, or the reminder that real love never asks you to abandon yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments, because it is through your voice and reflection that this space becomes an exchange, not just a monologue. And if this message touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Press the bell icon so you never miss an opportunity to receive the latest videos, each one designed to guide you deeper into the mystery of love, psychology, and self-empowerment.